Okay, great. Then, yes, let's go ahead then and call this, it's a joint meeting agenda, but it looks like we're doing things sequentially here. So we'll just still go ahead and call the Wednesday, September 29th, Albany Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. With that, staff, can you please call roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Donaldson.
Here.
Commissioner McLeod.
Here.
Commissioner Moen.
Here.
And Chair Waddy.
Here. Next up on the agenda, ex parte communications. Do any commissioners have any ex parte communications to disclose tonight?
Nope.
All right, seeing head nods, we'll take that as a no. Great, that will close that item. Move on to item 4, consent calendar, of which there are none calendared this evening. Item 5, announcements and communications, also none this evening. That takes us on to item 6. This is general public comment. This is the opportunity for members of the public to call in if they wish to address the commission on an item that is not on this evening's agenda. So if anyone wishes to address the commission on any items other than the 540 San Pablo Avenue project tonight, known as the bowling alley, now is your time to go ahead and get in the queue and raise your hand. Staff, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak during general public comment?
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, last call for the public. All right, with that, we will go ahead and close public comment then and just move right along to item 7, which is our action item for the evening. First up, we have item 7-1. This is planning application 21-002, design review and density bonus for new mixed use development at 540 San Pablo Avenue.
Okay. Good evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with the commission. Oops. Wrong presentation. Bear with me for just a sec. Actually, stop this one more time. One more technical issue. My apologies for the delay.
So frustrating.
Okay. Okay, this should do the trick. Okay, here we go. My apologies for that. Okay, before you tonight is the design review and density bonus request for the proposed mixed use development at 540 San Pablo Avenue. This is the second official review for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and as part of your review tonight, we've actually included the resolutions for action for you to forward a recommendation to the City Council on the project entitlements. So just to give you a summary snapshot of the review for tonight, we will provide you with a staff presentation. The applicant will provide you with a presentation. We will hold the public comment and then bring it back to the commission for deliberation and any questions of the applicant. And then we'll bring it back to the commission for action on draft resolutions 2021-02 and 2021-03. The first resolution is related to CEQA, and the second resolution is related to the actual recommendation to approve, forwarding a recommendation to approve the project entitlements. Just to give you a snapshot, once again, the subject site is 2.18 acres with currently the Albany Bowl and miscellaneous retail on the property. The site zoning is San Pablo commercial, which allows for mixed use development by right. It is part of the planned residential commercial overlay zone, and it is served by both AC Transit immediately in front of the site and is within a half a mile to the El Cerrito Plaza BART station. And here's the zoning map that shows the property as it exists. And here's a bit of a context map. Currently, the site is actually comprised of 9 parcels that will be consolidated into 1 parcel to accommodate the proposed project. So it will be a lot line dissolution to create 1 parcel. Here's a street view of the property facing west. Just to give you a snapshot again of the project details, the residential component will have 198 units across 2 buildings, buildings A and building B. 9 townhouses are proposed fronting Adams Street. Building A is 5 and 6 stories with a height of 69 feet and will contain 121 units. Building B is 6 stories, 71 feet in height with 77 units. The townhomes that face Adams Street are 3 stories with maximum height of 28 feet. And within the project, 21 units are proposed to be income restricted at the very low income restriction. A commercial space is 5,725 square feet. And there are 3 separate commercial spaces on the ground floor. With respect to bike parking and vehicle parking, 287 bicycle parking spaces are proposed, 37 of which will accommodate cargo spaces. And then 178 vehicle parking spaces are proposed, 152 will be covered and 26 are uncovered. And here's the site plan to give you an overview. So these are the townhouses on Adams. This easement we've discussed in the past that connects the property to Sutter Health. And then you have the building B here and building A here, goes both with frontage on San Pablo Avenue and of course on Clay Street as well. With respect to the unit mix, the project will include studio, loft, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom units. Overall, there is a mix of 207 units in this table, which is also contained in the staff report, provides a breakdown of that unit mix. The entitlements for this project include design review for the review of the building design, site plan design, and density bonus, which allows the developer to build additional dwelling units and obtain flexibility from local requirements in exchange for providing affordable housing. So in your staff report, we provided, once again, a summary list. The commission last looked at this project on August 4th. And at that time, you provided quite a bit of feedback to the applicant for some additional refinement. So we've broken it down. The first shot here relates to the ground floor activation. Comments included adding more retail space back and further activating San Pablo. In response to that, the retail spaces have been expanded. There have been some modifications to the garage walls on Adams and Clay to provide more daylight into the garage space as well as greater articulation. And then some questions had come up in regard to lighting, and that actually is worth noting that there's going to be a separate citywide lighting study. So that's going to be looked at under a separate city-sponsored effort. With respect to bicycle parking, a comment was made to improve the access to building A bike room and consider direct access from the parking garage in it, as well as increasing the overall size. So the modifications have been made to include the direct access. The bike room has also been enlarged to accommodate 14 additional bicycles and 6 additional cargo bikes. With respect to open space, the Adams Street Mini Park has been designed to include more play features. And with respect to building B, there was a comment regarding the planters, which have now been changed to be metal built-in planters. With respect to design, there has been some modification to the townhouse design with respect to colors and railing details and adding some balconies to the top floor unit. Another question had come up in regards to the trash chute. That gets a little complicated. We spoke with the fire department about that. There's requirements there for 2-hour rating fire sprinklers. and also waste management requires 3 chutes. So for those reasons, it's actually more desirable for the applicant to provide trash rooms on site rather than internal trash chutes. With respect to design review, the commission's purview extends to general plan conformance, site planning, access, the architecture and landscape design of the project, the coordination of design details, and privacy. So just to give you a few renderings to give you an idea of what the building looks like currently based on the latest designs included in your packet. This is a view facing north. This is the view from Brighton towards the entry court, so effectively facing west. This is the Adams Street elevation. You can see the mini park in between the townhouse building and building A. Again, another view of the mini park on Adams Street. And here you have a snapshot of the overall landscape design for the project. One of the requests that the commission had at the last hearing was to have an analysis prepared for your review of the preliminary design, landscape design for the project. So we worked with Panoramic Design Group, who provided recommendations. Their memo is also included as an attachment to the staff report. This is a summary list of suggestions, including more active use exercise space, incorporating a continuous planting strip for trees, focusing in on California native species where possible, more specific, ensuring that landscape area is greater than 10 feet in any dimension, and considering the use of ornamental grasses. And just as a general reminder, this project is subject to water efficient landscape compliance, which is set forth through state law. There's also requirements for C3 compliance stormwater runoff. Here you have the table of common usable open space. Again, it's a summary from your staff report. Overall, the applicant is proposing 13,570 square feet of usable open space. In the past, we've talked about bicycle connections in and around the site. This stems from policy that's in the active transportation plan that called out a bicycle connection from Adams Street through the property. As we've discussed in the past, there's a lot of issues with doing that, primarily liability. In response to this, I'll get into it on the next slide. We have been talking actively about potential bicycle infrastructure around the site that would proceed on a separate track. But with respect to this project and actual designs, the building A on the Clayside Street is going to be set back 8 feet, which will accommodate a significantly wider sidewalk as well as street trees where none currently exist. As I mentioned, we are looking at bicycle facilities. Of course, they would be on city right of way and be done as a part of a future capital improvements project. So the idea would be to have a bicycle facility on Clay Street and then potentially wrapping around to San Pablo. This project cannot, this project is a housing focused project that's subject to the Housing Accountability Act. The applicant has indicated they're willing to make an elective financial contribution, but I want to be clear that any bicycle infrastructure of public use would not be constructed through this project. And in your staff report, we also provided you with just the summary of Supreme Court case law from 1994 that affirms that the city has very limited authority when requiring dedications of that sort, in particular for bicycle infrastructure. And here's the Clay Street side where the building would be set back 8 feet. As I mentioned, there are no street trees there. This sidewalk would be enhanced quite a bit with the new building construction and also have street trees to green up that space. And I mentioned it just briefly, but I did want to give the commission just some general information on the potential of bicycle facilities on San Pablo, because there is a potential for that. And it requires, much like what we went through with University Village, there's a lot of external factors at play with outside agencies. So we have talked to the Alameda County Transportation Commission and AC Transit, since it would involve both of those entities. But again, I want to remind the commission that a project of that sort would solely be city sponsored, and it would actually fall under the purview of the Transportation Commission. So it's distinctly separate from this project. With respect to the density bonus, we wanted to give you a snapshot on the concession just as a reminder. A concession is a reduction in the site development standards or modification of zoning code or architectural design requirements. Other regulatory incentives which result in identifiable and actual cost reductions. This is typically, for example, reduced parking or reduced setbacks, and it's determined by the amount of affordability that's provided. So for this particular project, there are 21 very low income units, and under the law, if you provide a minimum of 15, three concessions may be granted for the project. With respect to waivers, the city is not permitted to apply any development standard which physically precludes the construction of the project, including the density bonus and granted concessions incentives. The applicant may request that the city waive or reduce standards that would prevent density bonus from being physically built. This is related more to development standards as an example, including height and floor area ratio. And there is no limit to the number of development standard waivers that can be requested or granted. And so here under state density bonus law, the base project is calculated based on our local requirements of 138 units. Under the state law, they can request a 50% density bonus, which achieves the 207 unit count. In exchange, there will be 21 units on site, 15% of the base project that will be available to very low income households. And so specific to this project, the waivers as proposed include an increase in the floor area ratio from 2.25 to 2.95, an increase in building height from 38 feet to 71 feet, and a daylight plane a projection on the Adams Street side. The concessions include reducing the open space requirement from 41,400 square feet to 21,170 square feet. And lastly, the second concession is seeking relief from the planned unit development requirement. And so the city has an inclusionary housing ordinance that requires the 15% of on-site income restricted units. So the preliminary breakdown right now is that 2 studios, 1 loft, 8 one-bedroom units, 8 two-bedroom units, 1 three-bedroom unit, and 1 townhouse unit will all be income restricted to the very low income status. Just as a general reminder, an affordable housing agreement is required and acted on by City Council as part of their review of the project entitlements. And this was a snapshot we've given you in the past. This data comes directly from Alameda County and gives you an idea of what constitutes very low income based on household size and what that correlates to in terms of rent and unit size. And just to refresh your memory on how the occupancy of this works, the project sponsor manages the full affordable unit process on other projects that they own. The housing availability listings are posted and stipulate the income requirements. Applicants are screened to make sure they're income qualified. And those candidates are run through a lottery using a randomizer computer program. So they're selected completely at random once it's been determined that they meet the income requirements. With respect to bicycle parking, there are 282 bicycle parking facilities proposed. There are 141 protected spaces within an enclosed room in Building A. There are 93 protected spaces within the room in Building B. Each townhome will have 4 bicycle spaces for 36 in total. There are double stacked racks and 37 cargo spaces proposed, as well as 12 outdoor racks along San Pablo Avenue. With respect to residential vehicle parking, because of the site being within half a mile of the Plaza BART station, and it is being applied for under density bonus law, the required parking ratio is 0.5 parking spaces per unit. The applicant is proposing to provide a mix of standard spaces and double lift parking stackers. The parking will be unbundled for this project. So this table also contained in your staff report gives you a snapshot of the parking. It's worth noting that The requirement is 105 parking spaces, but they are providing additional parking spaces on site beyond that amount. With respect to commercial parking, there's a requirement of 9 spaces based on the proposed building area. However, in this case, the applicant is proposing a total of 24 parking spaces. And again, another reminder, this project is subject to SB 330. That application filing is contained in your packet. It locks in the project to the development standards in place from the date of filing, and it establishes a 5-meeting limit for the project review overall. So tonight is meeting number 2. The Parks, Rec, and Open Space meeting after this will be meeting 3. And then we're tentatively anticipating taking this to City Council on October 18th. As I mentioned before, the project is subject to the Housing Accountability Act. And what that does is limits the Commission's authority to substantially change the project scope as presented by the applicant. And so in other words, the Commission's required to evaluate the application on its face as it's been submitted. If for some reason the Commission were inclined to deny the project or require a dramatic change, such as a reduction in density, additional findings would have to be made to support that conclusion. And that would have to be a preponderance of evidence identifying specific and adverse impacts. All the correspondence received in both March and August is included as an attachment to your report. And actually, there were 2 correspondences received for this latest packet and posted to the agenda website today. With respect to CEQA, we worked with our consultant, our CEQA consultant, on a categorical exemption determination 15332 infill development projects of the CEQA guidelines. You'll see in your packet the Exhibit A attachment for Resolution 2021-02 contains a pretty substantial supporting document of the analysis that they did to support the determination that, in fact, the project is categorically exempt from CEQA as it meets the criteria included in the statute. Just a quick note on some of the conditions of approval. There are conditions related to the above ground and rooftop utilities, tree protection plan, the color and material verification. I mentioned the affordable housing agreement. Public art is something that is included as a condition. The applicant will have the option to either incorporate art on site through a separate process or pay an in lieu fee. Again, tree protection measures, there's the compliance for bicycle parking and refuse room access, as well as an overall operations and maintenance plan. And with that, I've mentioned that there are 2 resolutions, Resolution 2021-02, that would be a determination related to CEQA, concluding that the project is categorically exempt. And then Resolution 2021-03 would be the Commission's formal recommendation to the City Council to approve density bonus and design review for the proposed project at 540. With that, I'm going to stop my screen share. And I believe the applicant, I will promote to a panelist, and they will have a presentation for you.
Okay, can everyone hear me and see the screen? Great. Good evening. Thank you, Anne, for a great presentation. I'm Isaiah Stackhouse of Trachtenberg Architects. Nice to be here with you tonight to review our project at 540 San Pablo Avenue. So again, it's a great location on the active San Pablo corridor, near groceries, services, and BART. And as a reminder, the site does include a relocatable easement that allows cars at Sutter to drive through the site and to exit out left onto San Pablo. We can confirm now that the easement is written into the property title and cannot be revoked, although the easement can be relocated. So here's the original site plan that we reviewed at the March 24th study session with the easement up along Adams. And the comments were that ideally like to see more open space and less outdoor surface parking, more open spaces potentially for community use, potentially a cafe adjacent to outdoor seating, a connection through to Adams, a built edge along Adams instead of the surface parking lot, and more family-friendly units if possible. So here is a previous site plan that we reviewed at the last meeting last month on August 4th. For this plan, 2/3 of the surface parking were replaced by townhouses and open space. The ground level included a park and 2 plazas that are open to community use. Redesigned Building B to have a cafe adjacent to the outdoor seating. We added 3 mid-block connections out to Adams. We created a built edge of townhouses along Adams instead of the surface parking lot. And we made the project more family friendly. In addition to adding a park and a family center, we added 22 3-bedroom units for a total of 102 family units, which is 49% of the overall project. So here's the current site plan with the adjustments that we've made since the last hearing and your last comments. Just to walk you through the plan, Building A is entered through the lobby here. There's leasing offices, and there's a family center, a fitness center, and a new larger bike room, and a corner restaurant cafe. Building B has a corner cafe restaurant open to outdoor seating, enlarged Building B lobby, and larger bike room, and some smaller MEP rooms, and then a larger retail on the north corner of the project. Just to walk through the redesigns, the park has been redesigned with family-friendly features. We'll show you that later in the presentation. The townhouses have been refined with a richer, more varied palette with decorative screens and alternating balconies. At Building A, windows have been added here to add articulation and to provide daylighting. And then for the Building A bike room, we've redesigned the garage so that there are multiple ways now to get to the bike room. You can enter through the lobby here, or also through an entry off the parking court through the garage. The bike rooms are now a bit larger with 14 more bikes added, 6 more cargo bikes, and we intend to add electric bike charging as well. On the San Pablo streetscape, again, we've enlarged all of the retail and lobbies. We're also proposing to add feature box windows to display photos and memorabilia. The facade is now 85% glazing along San Pablo. We would note that the overall amount of retail is something that we've studied very intensely on the site for this project. The project team has decades of experience in retail, and also had consultants weigh in, and our team believes that really that this is the right amount of retail for the site, and that that's really sort of the maximum amount of retail that we feel comfortable with, that will be successful and won't have vacancies. So again, all of these have been made larger, and they're sizes that we feel very comfortable with, that we think will lease up well and thrive, but but adding more than this is risky and something we would not feel comfortable with. Note, we heard comments from the commission and the public, both for more parking and for less parking. So just wanted to describe where we landed with the parking. So for the residential, there are 154 spaces for 207 units. That's a ratio of 0.74 spaces per unit. It's more than the 0.5 spaces required by code, but we believe it's needed to support the specific project, which is 49% family units, much higher percentage of 2 and 3 bedroom units than almost all projects, than most typical projects. And then on the commercial side, we have 24 spaces for 5,725 square feet. That's a ratio of 4 spaces per 1,000, which is very standard in retail, and we believe is a minimum necessary to attract good retail tenants. And we think that attracting vibrant retail is very important, both for the project and for the wider community to have successful, lively retail here. We would note that from the original plan, we reduced the surface parking by 66% and the overall parking by 19 spaces. And that replacing that parking, we've increased the bike significantly, exceeding the bike requirement by 33% and providing 37 cargo bikes where none are required. The project continues to include 11,000 square feet of publicly accessible site amenities. So there's the park on Adams, there's a cafe plaza, a fountain plaza, a dog walk area along Adams, 3 pedestrian connections out to Adams. Again, the clay sidewalk widening, where currently there's 5 feet. We're holding the whole project back 8 feet to beautify clay. And then San Pablo Avenue also will have a wider sidewalk with the building held back. On the podium level plan here, it's a good time to talk about the family-friendly features. So again, a total of 102 family units, 49% of the project. There is a family center on the ground floor, the redesigned family-friendly park, which is open to the wider community. Family-friendly bike parking with 37 cargo spaces. And finally, the project will have 21 below market rate units. 10 of these below market rate units will be family units, including a BMR townhouse. Here's a level 6 plan. At this point, it's the roofs of the townhouses and the step down along Adams. And we would note that while the project now includes townhouses and 102 family units, 2 and 3 bedroom larger units, the project is still well below the allowable density bonus square footage. So allowable with a 50% bonus would be an FAR of 3.375. The project is proposed to be 12% below that at 2.96. And similarly, gross floor area at 321,000 is allowable, and we're holding about 40,000 square feet under that at 281,482 square feet. Here is a roof plan. Note there's a total of 21,170 square feet of open space. That's a 51% increase over the initial plans. That includes the 13,000 square feet of common space and also substantial additional private open space. Just to walk you through it, there is Plaza A at the ground level, Plaza B, the park on Adams, the Building A podium, Building B podium, Building A roof deck, Building B roof deck, and then private patios at the podium level all around Building A, and private patios on Building B. Here are unit plans. 3-bedroom townhouses have entered from Adams. There is an office bonus room, a garage on the ground level, kitchen, living, dining, and 3 bedrooms up on the 3rd floor. Here are 3-bedroom units that are around 1,300 square feet, 2-bedroom units in the range of 1,000 to 1,100 square feet, loft and one-bedroom units that are 660 to 700 square feet, and studios in the range of 490 to 527. And again, when you add up the 2 and 3 bedroom units, the family units, it's 102 units, 49% of the project. So here's a view looking north along San Pablo, showing the richly articulated buildings with bay windows and strong corner elements. Here's a view from Brighton looking east, with the easement creating this natural break in the massing. We're proposing a complementary palette of rich, earthy materials, brick veneer, integral color plaster, Corten steel accents. What we're trying to do is create high quality buildings with careful detailing that really stand the test of time. Here's a view looking south along San Pablo, showing the new fabric of retail and rich pedestrian streetscape. Again, the project is now 85% glazing. And then at the program elements like the bike room here, we're proposing that they be opportunities for feature box windows to display photos, objects, and memorabilia. They would have clear story windows up above to still allow daylighting into the rooms behind. These window boxes can be illuminated at night to enliven the streetscape and pedestrian experience. Here's a view looking south along San Pablo, again with a strong corner element and an active roofscape. Here's a view from Adams and Clay looking north. Here's a view from Adams looking east towards the park with the dog walk over here, townhouses off to the left. Here's a close-up view of the park, now redesigned with family-friendly features. You can also see here more variation, increased variation and a richer palette for the townhouses. Here's a close-up view of those townhouses with their front yards, porches, decks, and a detailed view of the townhouses showing the new decorative screens, the more variated and richer color palette. And every third unit has a larger balcony added on the top floor to create some more sculpture and variation. Here are building sections through building B in the townhouses. The townhouses are held below the daylight plane, and building B, of course, is far back from Adams. Through the center of the park, there is no construction. And then through building A, the density bonus does pop up above the daylight plane, but the building is stepped back. Here is a landscape plan with lush planting, new and existing trees around all the streetscapes and throughout the site. Note our landscape architect has met with the city arborist, and the city arborist determined the replacement for the trees that would be replaced and the trees that would stay. This site plan includes the final layout with all of the total street trees. Here's a detailed landscape plans at the ground level park and plaza. Again, we're exploring features that recall the bowling alley, things like reclaimed wood for community benches, and a bowling ball like fountain. And here are landscape plans at the podium levels of buildings A and B. Again, lush planting with large tree canopies and a range of seating and gathering areas. Here are landscape plans at the roof decks of buildings A and B. Both are landscaped and furnished, and both have attached lounges with restrooms. And we note that from the street, these roof decks add to the activation of the facades and add to the sense of activity and vibrancy of the buildings. So we see this as a very green project. It's a model site really for sustainable development, being walkable to groceries and transit. We'll have electric bike charging stations. We'll have 282 total bikes, 34% more than required. We'll have EV charging stations. We'll have installed rooftop solar and all electric in the units. It's a project that will benefit Albany in many ways. It'll create a vibrant stretch of pedestrian-oriented retail. It'll create 11,000 square feet of publicly accessible on-site amenities, including a park, 2 plazas, and sidewalk widenings. It'll create 207 units of much-needed housing. It's a very family-friendly project with a total of 102 family units, 49% of the project, including townhouses. Includes a ground-level family center, cargo bike parking, and a on-site family park. And finally, it'll include 21 below-market rate units with 10 below-market rate family units, including a below-market rate townhouse. Thank you. That concludes our presentation, and we're here for any questions.
Thank you, Isaiah. I think right now we'll go ahead and just open it up for public comment. And let me see if I can get the screen back. Staff, so now to the public, now is your opportunity to raise your hand and get in the queue. After we do public comment, we'll turn it back to commissioners for both comment and questions. So stick around, Isaiah. Okay. And I assume we have members of the public who wish to raise their hand.
Yeah, we have right now one person with a raised hand.
Okay, great. And then to other folks who are listening in, we are going to just jump to public comment right now. So please go ahead and get in the queue or call in if you'd like to provide public testimony on this project. Go ahead, staff.
Okay, the first speaker is Nick Peterson.
Wow, since I'm the only one, can I have 10 minutes? You can hear me, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, Nick Peterson, I'm a resident of Albany. I'm also a member of the Climate Action Committee, but I'm not speaking for that committee right now with my comments. Do I have, my time is 3 minutes, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't see any timer, so. I want to greatly support this, put forward my support for this project. I think the developer and the architect have worked very hard with the community to respond to the requests that have been put forward. And as probably what will be the first major and very key project in a very important place in our city, this really sets the tone, sets the vision. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate how the developer has responded to the comments. One thing I'd like to say is I know there are a lot of people that like to see less parking, more space, more units. We can work on that later. I think having a little bit more parking than what's actually required by the density bonus is good, as it addresses some of the people's concerns, and this becomes more of a transition building to what we'll see later. This building is going to succeed. This building is going to show how San Pablo Ave can develop and do it in a correct way. So I'm very encouraged by what I see here. I applaud the 100% electric and the solar panel on site. Also, you'll be complying with the city's requirement for all parking spaces to be solar ready, EV ready. So this is the future, and I'm really happy to endorse it. Also, I'm speaking for Albany Climate Action Coalition, which is a group that really stands behind this type of well thought out, planned community amenity development. So please log me in as being all a very avid supporter of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, staff. Are there any other hands raised right now?
There are not any hands. Oh, no, here we go. We have just got a hand.
Okay. And just a reminder before we go to that speaker again to the public, this is your one and only opportunity to provide public testimony for the item tonight, and it is an action item this evening. So just encouraging folks to come in if they call in if they'd like to provide public testimony. Thanks.
Okay. Clay, you have 3 minutes.
It sounds like we're dispensing with public comment as early as and as soon as possible tonight. I've made many statements. I think there are problems with this project. But I was pleased that all my former letters were included in the packet, and those commission members who waded through the 517 pages had a chance to find them. I'd like to make one modest proposal. It'd be great if there was some discussion of the proposal. As a condition of approval, I think it would be appropriate to encourage or require the developer to manage the now unbundled parking in a manner that it is 100% or majority of which is utilized. I mean, the worst case scenario would be you would manage it, which is the same fancy way of saying pricing it, such that it was not utilized by residents, and they simply preferred to save the money and park off street. So I think it'd be great to have a condition of approval that the parking, which our ordinance requires that projects provide sufficient off-street parking to meet the needs of the project, but since we're unbundling it, it's going to require that it's managed appropriately. So I think that'd be an appropriate condition of approval. That's all. Thanks.
All right, staff, do we have, it looks like we have one more hand raised.
Yeah. Amy, you now have 3 minutes.
Hi, didn't think it was going to come on this early, and I'm sure a lot of people didn't. I'm really pleased to see the much needed housing in Albany, especially in a transit-rich corridor like this, alongside the bus routes and across the street from BART. I think it's terrific. I definitely want to thank the commission and staff and the applicants for the amount of bike parking that's there, which is very reasonable for families who will certainly live there with bike parking for larger bikes, cargo bikes, and for plenty for kids so they can bike to school. This aspect is so important to our environment, since more than 50% of our greenhouse gases are caused by motor vehicle emissions. So this is really key for us to do. So thank you. I've got one little tiny detail I wanted to address. It seems like in the townhouses, the bike parking is jammed behind the garbage bins and the recycle bins, which obviously isn't impractical. I live on a block with lots of apartments on Canes, and most of the bins or all the bins are outside. Depending on where the garbage is going to be picked up here, if it's on Adams or San Pablo, the residents are going to have to roll bikes around apartment buildings, and that doesn't seem practical. So I think that you should find an outdoor location, maybe some sort of a lean-to or something for the townhouse garbage recycle bins, because it doesn't work the way it is now. They're either going to be left on San Pablo if they pick it up on San Pablo, or you have to roll it around apartments, which is not practical either. But that's obviously a tiny detail, but that would also help free up the bike parking so you could actually get your bike out of the garage. I hope the city seriously works on the capital improvement project to create a low-stress bike facility around the project, and that's about it. Thank you.
Hey, Brian Martin, 3 minutes.
Yeah, hi, my name is Brian Martin, resident on the 600 block of Adams. I have commented in writing and but wanted to say a few things. One is the appreciation for the developer / architect significantly changing a number of things since the beginning that I think are on the whole improvements, and I think a number of people feel that way. Offering a number of things for the community that in public spaces, and so that is appreciated. I am concerned. I also think this is, aside from the parking issues that I've mentioned and tried to give perspective on, I think there's a number of positives to the design. The proposal by Clay Larson, I think, is a good one. I don't know how the city could formulate that, but I think, even a mathematical formula that says, when the units are basically full, or like whatever percentage of the units that are full of people, look at some, there should be roughly that many parking spaces filled on site. And if they're not, then there's some function that then lowers the price of the parking until it is actually fully utilized. Because otherwise, the whole thing, people paying thousands of dollars a year for an on-site parking space, which seems to be the standard, would provide huge incentives for people to park in the neighborhood. And then because the city appears to be talking about allowing the parking spaces to be reassessed later on, it provides incentive for the owner to declare that there's a lot of vacant spaces when they just haven't responded. Partly they haven't responded to market forces, and the city hasn't done anything to help avoid spillover parking. Would be a concern. I do want to make sure that the development doesn't have any driveways onto Adams or Clay. I know those were proposed, have been proposed by some commissioners, at least that's how I understood what they were saying. Wanted to make sure that was avoided for the obvious reasons. As far as the park, I think that's an excellent addition. I'm looking forward to that. My kids are grown now, but are almost grown, and we live in a relative parks desert. So that is a good amenity that I appreciate. And I look forward to the discussion from the commissioners to seeing what further things can be decided about this to improve it. Thank you.
We have one more hand raised. Ken McCroskey, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to echo some of the comments about the quality of the articulation of the project and the response to previous commissioner and public comment. Thank you very much. I have some questions about whether retail employees and potential staff members of this development will have access to the protected bike parking. Potentially people working at a cafe might come on a bike and work all day, can't watch their bike. It would be great if they had access to more secure bike parking. I'm also interested, the project lead mentioned that electric vehicle charging spaces would be available as part of the project. That's terrific. I hope that all spaces are EV charging ready. And I'm wondering if any of the public facing spaces will be electric charging stations as well. And in kind of that vein, are there spaces that could be used in this development for parking car share cars, both for the use of the residents and the nearby public? And one of the previous public speakers, or two of them, talked about pricing the parking so that all of it gets used. While I'm sensitive to not wanting to push first or second cars of residents into the neighborhood, I would love it if in the long run, none of the spaces in this development were used, as long as we're not overburdening the neighborhood. It is in a transit-rich area, and would love to focus on that end of things. Thank you very much.
I don't see any other hands raised right now.
Okay, this will be one last and final call for members of the public. Now is your opportunity to call in or raise your hand if you would like to speak on this item. Last call.
Actually, we have one more.
Okay.
Nico Nagel.
Hi all, Nico Nagel here, speaking on behalf of the Housing Action Coalition. Just want to, just really want to take the opportunity to say that this project is the type of project that can really activate this section of San Pablo and can really help achieve the shared goals of folks in the neighborhood, of activating streets, of seeing new neighbors. That just want to speak in support of this type of housing on San Pablo. Thank you.
All right, staff. Any final speakers in the queue?
I don't see any right at this time.
Okay, great.
I noticed there's a panelist who's a pros park commissioner with a hand up.
Is that intentional? Or
Actually, I see that now. Bear with me. Our city attorney is on the call. I'm gonna ask her if it's okay if a pros member comments on the design or is able to comment on the design.
And I think maybe while you're checking into that, that hand has gone down. It may have been a mistake, but also it looks like there is one more hand up in the public call-in queue, if I'm seeing that right. Oh, maybe it
went down.
Just disappeared. Okay, for everyone again, this is the last and final call on public comment. Please go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to speak in public comment. Going once, going twice. All right, with that, we will go ahead and close public comment on this item then, and turn it back to commissioners. Again, this is both for any questions of either staff or the applicant, as well as general comments on this. So feel free to consolidate both your questions and commentary. Would anyone like to go first? Commissioner Donaldson, go ahead.
Yes, could I have a couple of small questions I could like to ask of Isaiah, just more for clarification and my own edification, if that's possible. And maybe I'll make my comments later. Isaiah, I'm confused a little bit about some of the private open space or the open on the sheet AO1B, and then also on your presentation, the table you had, it talks about a maximum of 100 square feet, sort of in front of each of the units, like on the podium levels, and it says max of 100 square feet, and I'm confused by that. Some of those areas look like they're bigger than others, so so I'm confused about how that open space area was sort of calculated. If you could clarify that, it'd be great.
Yeah, I think that the townhouses would be a good example where there's a large front yard there of open space, but the code, as we understand it, allows you to include for each unit only up to 100 square feet, because that 100 gets multiplied by 2 and becomes the 200 square feet for that unit. So a lot of the spaces are much larger than 100 square feet, but we're only counting 100 square feet for each. Does that make sense?
I think it does. Okay, I think it is. So in a way,
we're actually providing much more than that, but the way the code limits each. So you're probably actually have a small understatement then for in your open space calculations. Yeah, again, this is just 100% qualifying open spaces, and for instance, it does not include the dog walk, which doesn't quite meet the technical dimensions. Doesn't meet, also doesn't include the clay widening. So it's just sort of 100% compliant letter of the law amount. The actual total amount is probably quite a bit larger.
Okay. I think that's helpful. And I want to ask about like how the parking lifts would work. In particular, what if one double lift was assigned to people, to 2 different households or people from 2 different units, if you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I do understand what you mean. It used to be that these types of lifts were tandem lifts, where each lift was its own thing, and you had to move the bottom car out to get the top car in, and vice versa. But these were actually puzzle lifts. So they're grouped into a maximum of 10 in a row here. And there's one open slot. And then here's a good example here. So this is seven days, top and bottom, would be 14 spaces. However, one space needs to remain open at all times. And these kind of shuffle like a jukebox, and that open spot can pull up anywhere so that you can get your car in, and the whole machine again, it's a puzzle lift, recirculates. So anyone can come and go at any time.
Have you had experience with those? And
yeah, we have them in many buildings at this point, and they've been, you know, that old style of tandem lift. You know, used one of those, you know, over 20 years ago, but for the last sort of 15 years or more, it's all been these puzzle style lifts.
Okay.
So they're in most of our projects now.
Okay. All right. That's interesting.
And there are several manufacturers, including some here in the Bay Area.
Okay. That's interesting. Another small comment. When I read in the staff report, I noticed that the townhomes would be 38 feet high. Isn't that a typo? Wouldn't they be 28 feet?
Yeah, 28 feet.
Okay, okay. I want to clarify that. And I think regarding the parking and the parking lifts, I think Ken McCroskey a few minutes ago had a good question for you as well about, let's see, about possibility of assigning car shares to some spots, and or about your plans or intentions for electric vehicle charging.
Yeah.
Have any thoughts on that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we are planning to have 2 outdoor EV spots that would be, you know, available as outdoor spots that are open to everybody. And car share is something that we would consider trying to attract to the site. But what we found in the past is that there may or may not be interest from the car share programs, even if we were to offer a spot. So, you know, it's definitely something that we would see as a benefit to the project that we may likely try to get one in, but whether or not one actually comes in is completely up to these private companies, and they may or may not have any interest in it.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions right now. I'll have comments later, I guess. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sorry, lost my mute button there. Go ahead, Commissioner Pilch.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for the public for all their comments throughout this process, and thank you to the applicant, the architect here, for doing a good project. I think there's a lot of good stuff here, and also being receptive and responsive to our comments and to the public's comments. So that said, just a little comment about process. I also was a little bit surprised that we didn't do commissioner questions and then went before public comment, as is our usual. I hope we didn't cut any of the public out by doing that. And I'm a little bit concerned that this meeting is constructed so that we will be time constrained in our comments. But we do have another meeting we can have if necessary, so that's good to know, because I don't want to not be able to finish this review. So questions for one question for staff, and then a number of questions for the architect. Mr. Ed Fields had a comment about the EIR review, or had some comments about that. I wonder if staff had any response to that at this point.
I took a glance through it, and it looked like there, what he identified were kind of minor corrections, just for consistency within the document. So that's not a problem to modify.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And for the architect, thank you for taking our questions. I just want to, so I'm glad that you added the windows to the garage area so that there would be natural light into the garage. But from what I understand, only a few windows were added, but it was not opened up to air and visibility. Personally, I think it's safer and better if it were actually opened up to the air completely and opened up so that the people could see in and out of the garage. But I wanted to ask you what your thinking was for only putting in the windows rather than a treatment which kind of completely opens up the garage, you know, with some sort of mesh that allows people not to go in and out, but allows them to see in and out and air and light to go in and out.
Well, we did talk about it quite a bit, and it's something we've talked about on other projects as well. And there were a few factors that swayed us in this direction. One, we have several examples of built projects where we've done similar things, where we've sort of had filmed windows, and we do have some air grills up above, and we do find that they work really well to you know, obviously to allow light in and to give a feeling of activity. Also, you know, we have, you know, where garages are open to view, in the nighttime especially, the garage lighting tends to be not the greatest color. It tends to be kind of a harsh color and can look quite harsh. And so we weren't sure if that would be a benefit. And then we also had some concerns that, you know, especially from Adams, which is the longer exposed facade, that might not be a good thing for the neighbors to feel like they're living across the street from a parking garage, and that it felt calmer and still looked good, looked better to have sort of more subtle opaque windows that still serve the function. In terms of the actual ventilation, unless the garage was, you know, was virtually entirely open with just columns, which would have a very different feel, especially for those folks on Adams, then the garage still needs mechanical ventilation in any case. So those were, again, we did think about it a lot. We do feel like this is the right decision, that it will look the best, especially at night, to passersby and to people who live across the street from it. And again, you know, we think we have, you know, several examples of built projects where the strategy has just been very successful.
Okay, no, fair enough. Thank you for your addressing that. What is your intention with regard to the landscape plan review, which seemed to have a number of good comments?
Those will definitely be reviewed with a landscape architect. You know, it's you know, we'll definitely, just as we have been up to this date, we'll continue to be, you know, receptive to making adjustments to the landscape. But we haven't had a chance yet to go over any of those in detail.
Okay. In my opinion, it seems like they should all be accepted. They seem like good comments. Can you talk about the bicycle facilities, the bike racks, for example, for the retail and for the employees of the retail?
That is a good question, and something that we, to be honest, have not determined yet. So let's look at the plan. It is something we're open to. You know, at this point, we just sort of followed the code, which has sort of outdoor parking for, you know, for retail, and you know, and indoor spaces for commercial. but that's definitely something, like, for instance, something that we could look at and make adjustments for. Like, for instance, we might be able to take, here, let me turn on my pointer. Can everyone see the pointer here on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, we might, for instance, take a portion of bike room A here and wall it off like this and open it up to the garage. So that is something that we could look at if we wanted to try to provide some dedicated commercial bike parking for employees. I mean, the assumption is that the outdoor parking serves the customers of retail quite well, but for employees, we could definitely look at making adjustments to the partitions and layouts to accommodate some bike parking as well. There is also some space that could be looked at but we probably would not want to give up park area or plaza area to do so. So we probably look to the interior of the building for a solution.
Okay, thank you for that. But are any racks, the location of any racks, called out yet in any of your plans so far?
Yeah,
the outdoor racks.
Yeah, the outdoor racks are called out in the plans and landscape plans.
Okay.
And there are, my recollection is there are only 4 required, and we have 12. We could certainly do more if needed. We try to just sort of far exceed the code. Okay.
Yeah, I thank you for that answer. I just hadn't found them yet on the plan, so it's good to know that they are called out there. Because oftentimes the location is so important. Sometimes they get put up against walls and they become unusable. So calling them out early on is really important. So thank you for that. So you mentioned a couple of things have been mentioned as the intentions for the project. One of them is unbundled parking, and one of them is a possible contribution to the future bikeways around the project, which would not be a responsibility of yours. So am I correct that neither of these things is yet in your actual written communications?
Definitely the unbundled parking, is a definite and something we're committed to. And we've really not talked in any detail about, future bike path contribution. It's quite a ways from here until we get to the point where we have construction drawings and pricing and trying to secure financing and all that, and a lot to look at still.
Okay, so it's correct that unbundled parking, both these things have not been specified by you in writing as of yet, correct?
I think that we probably have specified the unbundled parking. It is listed in the staff report as well. But that is our every intention. And I believe that is written as well.
I know the staff wrote it down, but it seemed unusual that it wasn't part of the applicant's materials.
Well,
but,
we can certainly make sure that it's added in the on the plans or the applicant statement. It's something that we're very decided on.
Okay, great, good to know. Yeah. Okay, let's see. The townhouses, a couple of good things, good comments came up about the garages of the townhouses. And number one, the garages open up to the easement. And number two, the garbage bins are in the garages. And so can you speak to both the difficulty of accessing the garages from the easement area by the motor vehicles and bicycles, and accessing the garbage bins from there as well?
Well, we definitely feel like since no matter what, we have to have this easement through here, that we certainly, as was discussed by one of the neighbors, we wouldn't want to suggest that this be continuous curb cuts on Adams for all these townhouses. We think it's much friendlier to the street to have these porches and decks and balconies. We feel very good about that. We understand the comment about the trash, and we will look at that more. There's quite a bit of room to work with, but we also, could look at having trash. For instance, we might even, it's not that far to building A or building B. We could look at having the townhouse trash within one of those buildings as well, within one of the existing rooms. So that's definitely a next level order detail we can look at.
Okay. Yeah, I think at the very least, that's going to be a pretty a busy area and potentially a little bit dangerous for the townhouse occupants. So, maybe lots of signage with 5 miles an hour or flashing lights or what have you is going to be needed there. So I understood that you're trying to keep the Adams, you're trying to preserve the Adams Street side there. So, but it does require perhaps some mitigation. And just a couple more. Parking, let's see. Can you, I guess you haven't detailed yet in your plan so far about the electric charging stations. You did just make some verbal comments just a few minutes ago about that, and I heard those. So let me ask you this: do you have a percentage of spaces that will have EV charging, and do you plan to have all the spaces EV charging ready?
Both good questions. Yeah, we did mention that outside we talked about and want to do 2 stations. We have actually, we're just talking with Anne earlier today, trying to sort out and get confirmation on the city's latest requirements for EV. And it's still, we haven't heard back yet and still aren't 100% certain. It's our every intention to, to happily meet and possibly exceed the, whatever the city's requirement is, both for installed and future. This is a development team that has on other projects voluntarily done more than has been required. And so that's a possibility as well. But certainly we will, very happily meet the requirements, to say the least.
Okay. Understood. Thank you for that. And just to note that, the state is requiring more and more EVs on the road, and therefore there will be a need for more EV charging. And for you, I would consider the fact that the EV charging can be an attraction, both for the tenants and for the retail people, that people are attracted to come to places where they know there will be EV charging, because it's a commodity in demand, and it's a scarce and in demand commodity. So something to keep in mind as you have those conversations. And then finally, I thought it was a good question about the parking management, about having pricing the parking. So that'll be my final question. Could you just talk about your thoughts on the matter, if you've had any so far?
We haven't had a chance to talk about it as a team, but I think sort of just initial reaction was, we understand where the comment's coming from, but it's without really thinking that through in a lot of detail and trying to predict what the demand might be in 5 years or 10 years, get uncomfortable committing to anything right now.
Sure. Just a note about that is, a lot of we've heard a number of comments about spillover parking. So, you're addressing that could go far towards, mitigating the concerns of the neighbors about that. So something to think about. And I'll end my questions there. I probably will have a few comments as well after I hear the other commissioners' questions, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner McLeod.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'd like also to echo the appreciation for having listened in the past and come up with a lot of great changes and improvements. So I'll just ask a few questions and I guess leave comments for later. Going back to the all electrical, you said all electric units. That doesn't, for me, say all electric building. So can you clarify that, please?
Yeah, and we have had, we understand electric is the future. We want to implement as much electric into this building as we possibly can and still have a feasible project. There are lots of things that are very easy to do and that we absolutely will plan to do. For instance, this will be all electric appliances, all electric heating and cooling, but there's two things that we haven't decided on that we would like to decide on when we're working on building permits, when we have total costs in mind. The first one is, again, we're not saying that we have to have it or need it, but we want to keep it open as an option, would be gas to attract restaurant tenants. Again, we feel very strongly that the retail is a huge component of the success of the project, both for the project and for the future residents and also the wider community. And we really want to be able to attract great tenants. So that's one. And then the only other item is water heating. It's something that we're still working on. We have a lot of projects right now that are starting to switch over towards all electric, engineers and GCs working on ways to make electric gas heating, feasible and competitive. But it's something that that our general contractor is still strongly recommending that we hold off on deciding on, because it at this stage, in their opinion, is a huge ticket item and something that we're still trying to figure out. So it's our intention to provide all of the units themselves will be electric, but we'd like to keep open our option for the commercial spaces and for the water heating.
Yeah, I guess my response would be that the water heating, there are technical, feasible ways of doing it with electric heat pumps that are like 4 times more efficient than gas in terms of energy use. And by not doing the gas piping, trenching, meters, etc., flues, you save a lot of money there, and that money you save on that goes into your electrical equipment and system. So, for me, to align with our climate action plan and climate goals, given the, fact that our state seems to be burning up in front of our eyes, et cetera, that we have to get off of fossil fuels, and greenhouse gases are, created by burning natural gas is one of the main components of that. So, I think it's just would be really kind of derelict not to go all electric. And also, it just seems like you would be stranding your assets if you go with gas, because the state is going to phase out fossil fuel use. It's coming someday or another. And at that point, you would be faced with a seriously expensive and disruptive retrofit for your building. So I'd really like you to consider that as you're moving forward on that part of it. I had another question. We hear a lot about parking, and unbundling is great. I think that's the way to do it. But what else are you doing to mitigate the car usage, car trips at this site? And one example would be, or one thing you could do would be to offer transit passes to every residence. I think Berkeley is now requiring 2 Clipper cards per residence. I think as part of a transit-oriented development, we want to be encouraging other modes than car usage. So what's your team and what's your thinking on providing Clipper cards? Is that something that you would be willing to do for all residents? Or at least each residence could have a Clipper card or 2, something like that.
I mean, I think that's, something that we can certainly look at, but we need to look at the cost of that and the cost of that in the context of the building. I mean, I think that overall, we feel like putting 207 units here, walkable to grocery stores, walkable to BART with a bus station right in front, that is worlds better than putting 200 units spread across suburbia. So the project, by its very location and nature, is is walkable, and we think doing a lot to to be a good ecologically sound project. But so that's our take at the moment. It's so the Clipper cards are definitely something we can look at, but would need to be looked at, in conjunction with overall building costs and project costs to make sure that we, end up with a feasible project that that gets built, that we're doing something real here.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I would, strongly encourage you to consider it, as a way of addressing the public's concerns about overflow parking, that you're doing, what you can to mitigate that as a problem. Then just another minor point in the bike rooms, we're getting more and more electric bikes. So I would imagine you would be providing electrical outlets, a fairly generous number. It's mostly just wall outlets, but most charging cords are only 6 feet or something like that. And, you can't necessarily be moving your bike around to find the one outlet in the room, or 3 or 4. So, some sort of commitment to, wall outlets at every 6 feet or something, or some, there must be some guidelines for this, but, working that out would be helpful.
We agree. It's amazing how much that's changed in the last few years, and how important electric bikes have become. And, we definitely see that as a big asset for the project.
Okay, and then I just wanted to confirm you are installing solar PV on the roof, so those will be active working panels. It's not just solar ready.
Yeah, solar installed.
Okay, great. That's terrific. That's fantastic. One more question, and then I'll let others ask questions and I'll comment after. But are you considering any certifications such as LEED or others? Passive house for multifamily is apparently fairly cost effective.
Not at the moment, but to be honest, we haven't really determined that or talked about it much.
Okay, well, I'll let others ask questions and I'll have more things to say afterwards. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Momin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, architect team, for a great presentation and updates following the commission's comments from the previous meeting. I don't have too many questions. Most of them have already been asked and explained by you. I just have a couple additional questions. I'm wondering if you have thought about security and access control for the ground floor spaces. I see particularly the parking and the bike parking area are open to commercial and retail users also. And they will also be using trash rooms for their trash disposal. So how would the security and access control would be managed?
Yeah, so the intention is that that public parking is exterior in the parking court, and that the garages, that the parking within the garages is just for residents. But we do see the commercial spaces being able to use the trash rooms and access to the, so employees from the commercial would have access to the garages, but they would not have keypad access into the lobbies or into the bike rooms. Again, we talked about how we could potentially give the commercial space its own small bike room that they would have keypad access to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so they would access the garage from their rented space, but not from the main garage door entrance. And that would be only limited for their bike room access and the trash disposal?
Yeah, so yeah, commercial can come out and access the trash room. Again, the general public parks out here and does not come into the garage. But residents would have car key access, into the lobbies or into the garages.
Okay, thank you. And then I have just an additional question to what Commissioner Pilch asked already about the windows in the garage. I agree with you, like large openings with screens and all that would also not be really interesting. Like views inside the garage would not be very attractive to the resident across the streets. So, and I agree with you that windows are being more effective in terms of creating some relief in the blankness of those walls. But I'm just wondering, why have you used very few windows? Was there any constraint in adding more windows apart from the cost? You have used provided just one window on Clay Street, whereas we have a 50 feet long blank wall, and on the Adam Street side you have like 5 windows. Could we have more windows? That would, I think, create some interest in those dead walls.
That's certainly something we could look at. Yeah, there are 2 in Adams here and 5 on Clay. I think we'd certainly be open to looking at adding more. These were roughly, I think, 20 to 25 feet on center. But certainly that's, we'd be open to adding more. It's not a perfect science.
Okay, thank you.
Great. I just had actually 2 very quick questions for the sponsor. First up, just following up on one of the public comments. Or I'm sorry, the retail bike question was already answered. The other question I had was relating to, you referenced the memorabilia, little shadow boxes that you'd be providing along the San Pablo frontage. Yeah. And I just wanted to double check. I assume that means from the bowling alley, memorabilia from the bowling alley, or is that just memorabilia in general?
Yeah, I mean, that's our thought, is that it would be bowling alley stuff. Maybe in 50 years, it'll be something different. But in the near term, that the memorabilia from the bowling alley.
Got it. Okay, great. Well, I'm happy. That was the only question I had, really small. Overall, just to provide my general comments on this. All in all, I think this is a great project. And I really want to commend the design team for, really coming with at the beginning of still a fairly fleshed out design. So we had a lot to respond to, but really taking our comments throughout the last several hearings into consideration and really made a lot of thoughtful changes into the project. I think the design is really elegant. I think it's some of the, at least what we're seeing on paper, so long as it doesn't get, value engineered down later on, I think it's some of the best. I think this could be some of the best work that San Pablo has seen in a long time. I do think really the breaking up of the 2 buildings, even though it's for functional purposes, I think gives a lot of opportunity for some larger community benefits, open spaces, and just a really nice modulation of the building form. all in all, really happy with the project, with the density, the on-site affordability. I have only one recommendation that I would make that I think make for a stronger project, and certainly incorporating, I think, especially some of the drought tolerant sort of species specific recommendations that Panoramic, the landscaping firm, provided. My only other recommendation would be I think it's the 6 parking spots closest to Adams Street that abut the park.
Did we lose her?
We lost her, yeah.
Chair, your audio is, maybe you can turn off your video. We're not getting your audio.
Okay.
We're just getting little bits of audio here and there.
My apologies, everyone. My internet just dropped. Commissioner Donaldson, why don't you go ahead, and I'm going to try to find a more stable connection here. And you're on mute, though.
On mute, yes. All right. Yes, I'm sorry that we lost you mid-sentence there, and I hope you can come back. So I guess if it's all right, we can start sort of comments on the overall project. I think you'd started that, and I'd like to hear what the rest of what you have to say as well. So I'll try to do that. 4 or 5 years ago, I had coffee with Ken Friedman, who was one of the owners of the Albany Bowl site, and who over the years had participated in just about every general plan amendment and general plan work that we'd had. And at the time, he made it clear that the owners of the Albany Bowl were certainly looking at the future and looking at actually retiring, and that this project, the development of the Albany Bowl site, could come in the future. In that conversation, I told him that I told him about this development team, specifically Trachtenberg Architects and the Reeds, Morgan Reed, because I had been doing some work in Berkeley for Berkeley, and I had seen their projects sail through the design review board, and their projects get real good response from the Berkeley city staff. A few weeks later, Ken called me and asked for the contact information for Trachtenberg Architects, which I gave him. And maybe that's what started this, that I'm really happy that we do have Trachtenberg as the architect, and I'm really happy we have the Reeds involved as the owners, because I do know that they have done really good projects in Berkeley. I've seen them myself. And I think the city of Albany is fortunate to have this development team working on this really important project for our city. In summary, I think the real benefits to Albany include the fact that we're getting 207 units of new housing and 21 units of very low income housing, which is always very, very difficult to achieve in any situation. I think we have an attractive design, and I'm really pleased we have the experienced architecture team we have, and that they've been responsive to the comments we've been getting both from commissioners and from the public. I like the material choices in the design, and especially the brick veneer. It reminds me of Levi's Plaza in San Francisco, which I've always liked. And I'm quite confident that the material with this development team, that the materials are going to be real high quality and that they will endure. So I think, and that's important to me. I like having the townhomes along Adams. I think that came from commission suggestions. I'm glad that they could respond to that, even though it meant reducing some of the parking. And because I think it really is an important feature of the project. I'm pleased with how the access easement through the property has been managed. I've always thought that that was a real constraint for the development of the Albany Bowl site. I think with this design, it's being really well handled. And it's really important, I think, for a project of this size that all of the traffic is focused on the signalized intersection we have at Brighton, and that will make its operations much smoother regularly. I'm very pleased with what's going to happen on the Clay Street frontage. That is really a dead spot right now, and I think that Trachtenberg and this architecture team doing a real good job to improve that frontage, landscape it, and just it'll really make that turn that from a really pretty ugly street into an attractive one for that area. So there's several areas where I do have concerns, and I want to talk about those. Probably no surprise is parking. So by my estimate, there'll be 20 studio units that'll generate about 8 cars in parking. The 10 loft units will probably generate about 5 cars. The 75 one-bedroom units will generate 56 cars, and the 80 two-bedroom units will generate about 96 cars, while the 13 three-bedroom units, without excluding the townhomes, will generate 21 cars, for a total of 186 cars in the apartment buildings, the 2 apartment buildings, that need to be parked in 134 spaces. So by my calculations, there'll be a 52 car deficit that'll have to be absorbed on the local streets, which are already filled with existing residential demand. I may be wrong in my calculations, but I think they're pretty solid. And in fact, even with those, even this number assumes that 35% of the households will be 0 car households, which is pretty high. And suppose half of the apartments were 0 car households, which I don't think is likely in the near term anyway. The remaining 98 households with cars would probably still fill the 134 spaces provided. I think that Albany's 1 car per unit standard for multifamily development is appropriate, is realistic, and it should be implemented. This project, in my opinion, is going to be underparked. People question that. People think we should have 0 parking minimums, but I believe cars are going to be around to stay, and that unfortunately this project is going to be underparked, and it's going to have significant spillover parking in the neighborhood, which I don't think is a very good thing. Regarding the unbundling, I've also put some thought into that. The 9 townhomes along Adams Street will have parking included in their rent. So that's my understanding anyway. So we have 198 units remaining where parking spaces will be available at an additional cost. That is, they'll be unbundled. If you want to park, you're going to have to pay extra for it. Many renters, maybe as many as half, who knows, will take their chances with street parking that Albany provides free of charge. This spillover parking will adversely impact the surrounding residential streets and probably the adjacent health center as well. In fact, I think any unregulated parking space within 300 to 500 feet of the project is going to be fair game, causing an unnecessary aggravation for the surrounding residents and other landowners. This is an avoidable impact, in my opinion. I think we should require that parking lot slots be included in the rental of all 22 3-bedroom units. I think the 82 bedroom units should have parking included in the rent, should be bundled, in other words. And I think the 32 or so of the 75 1-bedroom units should be bundled with parking bundled in order to ensure that the parking that is provided gets used. Minimizing the potential spillover impact that the project is going to have to deal with. I also note that there are no visitor parking spots provided here. UC Village, which has done a good job of accommodating all of their parking on their site, does have visitor parking spots, and we don't have any thought of that here. There will be visitors, and they will presumably be parking on the street. So, all right. So that's my main issue, my main problem with the project as it's proposed right now. We had several comments from a variety of commenters about the general plan and the project's conformance or non-conformance with the general plan policies. And I was looking at the resolutions we're being asked to approve tonight, and I noticed that both of them conclude that the project is consistent with the 2035 Albany general plan. This has been questioned by a number of comments, and I think that's right. I think rightfully so. Some of this can be resolved, I think, is more a matter of process, not substance, but because what is not stated either in the text of the categorical exemption or in the resolution of approval is that state laws and regulations that are intended to enable construction of huge numbers of housing units deliberately override many general plan policies where housing is proposed. That's certainly the case here. I believe that the analyses of the general plan policies in these documents should acknowledge our policy when our general plan policies are being compromised and what is forcing the compromise. In this case, I think the base project for this project, that is the base project without the density bonus rules applied, is consistent with our general plan. It is. I'm quite confident of that. But the waivers that are enabled by the state density bonus law override some of our general plan policies and zoning regulations with respect to the floor area ratio, clearly with respect to the height, which is doubles our height limit, the buffering, and in the general plan policies and the daylight plan and the zoning ordinance are overridden by the state density bonus law as applied here. And the open space requirements that we have in our general plan and our zoning ordinance are overridden by the state density bonus law as it applied here. I think all of this should be discussed policy by policy, so it is clear to our public which policies of the general plan are being respected and which policies are being overridden, and by which state law. How does this work? I don't think that the city council or this commission should be adopting resolutions saying the project is in conformance with the general plan when it is not and cannot because of the overriding mandates of the state law. While the state is telling us that we need a general plan for our community and we need a housing element that meets all of our assigned RENA requirements, quota, it's also allowing developers to waive certain requirements, force concessions of other requirements, and constraining our ability severely to constrain, to condition, or to deny, or to delay housing development projects. Housing is clearly a state priority. The state has declared we're in a housing emergency. And so when we ever discuss our general plan, I think we need to acknowledge these sanctioned overrides that the state is forcing us to accept. Otherwise, it just dilutes all of the work we put into the general plan and dilutes what we say in the general plan. We can build projects like this only when they're housing projects and only because the state is telling developers they can override our policies and our rules. So those are my thoughts on the overall project and the overall situation at this time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Donaldson. And if you don't mind, I'll just finish up my comments. Apologies for the lost connection there, but I am hardwired in now. Anyhow, I'll start at the beginning, but try to keep it really concise. All in all, I was just thanking the developer team. Again, I think as Commissioner Donaldson said, this is a really handsomely designed building. I think this ultimately could be one of the best designed new construction buildings along San Pablo. I've seen a lot of the new ones, and I think this one will be right up there. I think it's great, and really appreciate the development team's responsiveness to our comments throughout. The one remaining actually item that I had, and not a big surprise here, we do have some sort of competing thoughts among commissioners on here, but in the drive-through area where those 6 parking spaces are located that abut the little micro mini park. And Isaiah, if you wouldn't mind going to that, the plan view of the little mini park, it probably is easiest to speak from it there. Yeah, those 6 parking spaces to me, two things that concern me a little bit is, that was a great slide there. One, a little bit of a concern just from safety with cars that pull in and park there, with it being right up against a really small park. I think there's always a little bit of a risk of sort of people who are gathering there and having there be a little bit of pedestrian safety concern. But I also think that's a really missed opportunity to make a really lovely, slightly larger size park there. And I know you guys have waivers under state density bonus for your open space, and by no means would this be bringing you up to full code compliance, but it seems like a relatively small trade-off of 6 surface parking spaces in exchange for a bigger park. What that also does is really goes hand in hand with some of the recommendations that the Panoramic Landscape Group provided in providing a little bit more additional active recreational space. And again, and for adults, I think there could be a really nice synergy here. I'm sort of visualizing you could have something like a bocce ball court or some sort of other gathering space there that really rounds out that mini park, which I think is going to be a wonderful asset and actually probably a very big attraction to future tenants and an amenity to Albany residents who just live in the area as well. Again, I know because of state density bonus, we're a little hard pressed to mandate these things, but I do think that this would be something that wouldn't be a dramatic increase in cost. And again, you're already over the parking that we're sort of allowed to mandate. So this is all sort of in the voluntary parking stage anyhow. And that's certainly something that I would really encourage. The one other item that I actually have, but again, there may not be consensus on the commission for this, is I actually think this is still overparked. Maybe not on lease up day one, but I think if we were to look at what this building is like in 5 years post lease up, I think there's going to actually be a surplus of parking. And I think if that is the case, I don't want there to be regulatory barriers in place that make it difficult for the developer to forego those spaces or reallocate, turn some of the surface parking that's here into a parklet, or to have an expanded use for outdoor dining for some of the cafes or things of that nature. Again, not a huge ordeal, but just food for thought on that. I know in a lot of the projects that I work on in my day job, a lot of big buildings that have provided a lot parking, they're just not being used. There is a demographic shift that is happening, especially I think in rental projects, and there are more and more, especially younger families and couples, that are foregoing cars. So time will tell, but I do think that is where we're seeing the trends going. But with that said, that is sort of the one small comment that I think overall I think this is a great project for Albany, and I'm really excited to see you all break ground. So I certainly would be in a position tonight to make a motion to support the resolution to approve this, potentially with a recommendation to nix those 6 parking spaces, or at least encourage to maybe the city council that we would be supportive of that if they were willing to, if the sponsor was willing to swap those out for a larger park. With that, I think we had Commissioner McLeod stand up, and then we'll go to Commissioner Pilch. You're on mute, Commissioner McLeod.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I did make the comment at the last hearing that those 5 or 6 spaces should become part of that park. I guess it wasn't really noticed very much. And I would like to agree with that. In fact, I think that's a great suggestion, and I was going to make it independently of your thoughts there. Because, and I look at the open space requirement. It's been cut in half by the concession, and the concession is asked for based on the expensiveness or the expense of creating rooftop open space, roof decks. So here we are on the ground level where it is essentially not going to cost you hardly anything more than it would to create parking spaces there. So, you know, I really think it's an inexpensive way to add more open space and to create a much more family-friendly zone. You know, I look around the project and there's really not a lot of other family-friendly spaces. I could almost say none, you know, where kids are going to play or run around and do things. You know, I look at the townhouses and they are severely constrained by the rear driveway. And I look at the front yard of the townhouses, and at least the way they are in the renderings, they are not really, it is open space, but it doesn't look very user-friendly or not much of a play space at all. So I think this is a great opportunity for the project team to create more open space, make it more family-friendly. You know, I would rather see more park and less parking. So, you know, I agree 100% with Chair Waddy, and I would hope other commissioners would agree with that. You are over your, way over your minimum requirement for parking. And I agree that there's demographic changes. I think lots of other changes in transportation are coming, electric bikes. What I see in Albany is that parents want to ride their kids around on electric cargo bikes. And that's the constituency, that's who we should be designing for, and that's who we should be planning for. So that would be one strong recommendation that I would make. You know, I had other questions. I have lots of comments. You know, I had questions, concerns about the townhouses and the garages that are basically you're asking people to back out of a garage into 2 lanes of traffic into basically a 2-way street. You know, they're basically backing out blind at that point. So that's a big concern of mine. You know, overall, I really like the project, but I just think there are some areas for improvement. That easement, I was wondering, could it be one way so you could shrink the travel lane down a little bit, provide a little more buffer space for the townhouses while allowing turning radii for the garages? Something like that, I would ask the applicants to consider. I really think that traffic easement is hurting your project. You know, the last thing I would want if I'm a resident there is through traffic from some other parking lot. You know, it's less safe, riskier for kids. It chews up a lot of what could have been open space. So yeah, I'm just sorry that can't be negotiated out of the project. And at the same time, I was wondering if you have talked to Sutter about sharing their parking lot after hours or for business, because that is another way to alleviate some of the concerns about potentially visitors or business parking. I have really no idea how much that Sutter parking lot is used. I don't know what their hours are, but I expect after 6 p.m. it's probably not used very much. So, you know, that could be something that could be a shared resource and worth exploring. I would strongly encourage you to look at that. I 100% support unbundled parking. Yeah, you're quite a bit over the minimum requirement, 0.5 spaces per unit. So I think you have a lot of leeway to make some adjustments, you know, give up some spaces at the parklet. The other thing for employee bike parking, I would not want you to take away any of the bike spaces from the residential bike rooms. I would rather see that accommodated on the site elsewhere. For instance, 2 of the compact spaces near the plazas could become bike corrals. They could be covered, or you could provide bike lockers at some locations outside for employees. You know, that's the future I want to see. It's not a car-oriented development, but a transit-oriented, active transportation-oriented development. I had a number of other concerns. I mean, I was concerned about the bike parking in the townhouses. I don't think that's practical. I think our ordinance needs to have a clear access path of travel for bike parking from the parking space to an exit. You know, the idea that maybe you have to move a car or, you know, to get to your bike is really kind of self-defeating in terms of what we're trying to achieve here. So I don't know if you can come up with some creative way with your team to make those bikes easily accessible and taken outside. I mean, you could roll them through the house to the front door, but that's not very practical with a cargo bike. So, you know, I would encourage you to look at that again. And then again, for the bike rooms, when you're looking at the access into the garage, if you could can you pull up the ground floor plan, please? Yeah, I just, you know, the door opens right into a parking space. And I think there should be some more generous path of travel. You know, and the door is almost an impediment on the sidewalk. You're trying to move your bike around. It looks to me like the trash room has an aisle for it. Why can't we do that for the bike rooms, to have some sort of aisle to, you know, walk your bike out to the main aisles and move out to the street from there? You know, if you're trying to maneuver cargo bikes, you know, they're 6-7 feet long sometimes almost. So very difficult to pull it out one of those doors, you know, get around a parked car right there and maneuver it then, you know, around sharp corners at the edges of the parking area. It's just very difficult. So some more thought about the path of travel, moving those bikes in and out, and some way of having like a car-free space in front of the doorway like you do for the trash. I mean, I hate to think that the trash cans have better access than the bike rooms. So other things, you know, I have one major concern, and I mentioned it last time, and it's about the storefront spaces on San Pablo. And this is actually something that I feel very strongly about, and it's the fact that the mechanical rooms in Building B really shouldn't be there. That should be a commercial space. It actually runs directly counter to our zoning ordinances. So, you know, I would really like to see those moved and those be commercial spaces. I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about that, but it's very explicit for our planned residential commercial overlay district. It says, you know, ground floor frontage on San Pablo Avenue shall be commercial. And, you know, I'm fine with the active uses, even the bike rooms, but when it comes to just, you know, mechanical rooms, I don't think that's acceptable. Our land use ordinance for the San Pablo commercial corridor also says, it says exactly here, ground floor building frontage along San Pablo Avenue is reserved for commercial activity, except for any necessary access to residential facilities. So, you know, this is really directly counter to our code and ordinances. So I would really like to see those spaces moved and it become commercial space. And this is partly because I think it's better urban design. I think having more commercial opportunities, things that can serve our community, goods and services available within walking distance of residents on San Pablo Avenue, I think is more important than having mechanical rooms on the storefronts. You know, those could be moved to the back, similar to Building A, where they're not on the storefronts. You actually have reduced the amount of retail space along that whole frontage by quite a lot, I think, from the original designs, and especially at Building B, where you had about 3/4 of it as retail in the first go around. And now it's about maybe 50% retail. And if you look at the other side at Building A, that's maybe 20% retail, or commercial. So there's actually not that much commercial space along this frontage, which I'm a little disappointed in, but I'm willing to accept the other more active uses, and even the bike parking is fine. So, you know, for me, this is a pretty big issue. It's a very important urban design issue. It's really about providing goods and services along the whole corridor eventually, and providing more access to goods and services within walking distance of everybody who lives there. So that's a big one for me. I had some other things to think about.
Just quick also time check for commissioners. We are already a little over 5 minutes beyond 7 p.m. when the Rec Park Commission is supposed to start. I do want to make sure everyone can wrap their comments. But if we can try to just wrap up final comments and then see if we can make a motion tonight.
Yeah, I think that's unfortunate that we don't have more time, because this is obviously a very important project, super important project for our city. You know, I think it's an excellent project, but I think it deserves the time to address all the issues. You know, so yeah, 2 hours is probably not enough. And if we go over a little bit, I think we should be willing to do that. Let's see, where was I? Well, that was really the main issue for me, was mechanical rooms, and then increasing the size of the parklet, and then employee parking outside in some protected fashion and not reducing it for the residences. So that's it, and I'm willing to listen to other commissioners. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Welch.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with a lot of the what has been said by Commissioner McLeod, including not arbitrarily limiting our time to speak on this. It is important, and it's only 7 p.m. So I'm always trying to be as concise as possible, and I will continue to do so. So here I go. My comments are not in particular order, so bear with me if the subject jumps around a little bit. But I also concur that it's a good-looking project, and I'm excited for the vitality it's going to bring to Albany. I prefer a bit more color beyond grays and browns, but there you have it. I think the majority probably is a little bit more conservative in that area than I am. So I'll agree with the chairs and and Commissioner McLeod's comments about making that park larger. I would support a condition to do that. I also agree that we should, you know, if your contractor is balking about going all electric and, you know, considering taking away the gas lines as part of that, then I think that maybe your contractor is not up to date, because certainly I've heard from many people that that can be a wash. You can do all electric if you eliminate the gas and come out with the same price. So I would love to see you go all electric. Heat pump hot water heaters have been around forever, and they might be a little bit more expensive than gas water heaters, but then again, you're not putting the gas piping in. I have a heat pump hot water heater myself. It was more expensive, a little bit more expensive to install, but you know, the future is electric, as I think we all agree. So let's see. I want to clarify something for the public and everyone about some of these renderings. Most of the renderings show car parking at the curbs and the street on all sides. And it's my understanding that this is not staff's intention, that there be on-street car parking on, at least on two sides, on Clay and on San Pablo, and maybe not even on Adams. So I just want everyone to be aware that that is, you know, that's not part of the parking that's going to be available. Staff is talking about doing bikeways, at least on two of those sides. And so, and I think that we should not cede that public space for private use. Instead, we should provide amenities to the public, such as farmers market, pick up and drop off for DoorDash. Maybe that could be a car share zone, autonomous vehicle zone, temporary bikeways, lots of ways we could use that space. So just want to clarify that for everyone. About the Albany Bowls sign, would the chair be okay with me sharing my screen for a photograph of the Albany Bowl just for a brief session?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I'm not allowed to. Staff is going to have to allow me to. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So hopefully you can see that on most of my screen here. There's the Albany Bowl neon up at the very top, but then you'll notice that there's two neon signs lower down, the bowling and billiards one and the open lanes now sign. So I think, let me stop. Well, I'll leave that up for just a moment, but I think that, you know, on the renderings, we see that if you look closely at the renderings, you might think that the project is called the Aquatic, because I think that was left over from some renderings you had done for a project in Berkeley. But you certainly, as the Aquatic, you certainly do see large signage on at least one of your other buildings. So I think there was some support in last meeting for using the Albany Bowl sign. So I would suggest that if you don't want to reuse this large Albany Bowl sign here, that they would at least save the bowling and billiards and open lanes now signs. And I think those would be very attractive additions to your project, and that the public would be very interested in having those available. And that's something I think that, you know, you get a lot of public support for that. But in any case, I think that the city, if the architect doesn't choose to use those, the city should save those signs, because I think the public would, you know, has cried out about the loss of the Albany Bowl and would be thrilled to have those signs saved. Okay, next comment. I appreciate the landscape design review, and please do give it a thorough reading. In particular, there was a mention of the use of invasive, or the potential use of invasive species, and that really concerned me. So I do hope you will take those all into consideration, and I'll be looking forward to an update on that when this goes to our next meeting or to council, because that's very important that we do the right thing by the landscaping. Otherwise, it's great that you have a very robust landscape plan. I know this can't be part of the scope of the project, but it struck me that the street tree treatment should incorporate rain gardens, as is done in San Pablo in El Cerrito. I realize this is not part of the scope and this is additional cost, but I'm just going to throw it out there for both staff and applicant to think about. That would be, you know, rain gardens reduce the runoff into the sewer system and have a natural way of processing rain runoff. Almost done. I agree with all the bike parking comments from Commissioner McLeod, including being able to pull the bicycles straight out from the bicycle room. We don't want to make any impediments to people using bicycles, and that certainly would be one of them if people are trying to maneuver around cars just to get their bicycle out. It should be bicycles first and then cars second in terms of maneuverability. And I would, as Commissioner Moment says, I would support double the windows on Clay and Adams in the garage. So I'd like to suggest that if the commission is amenable, as adding that onto our resolution. In addition, I agree with the parking about the parking with Commissioner McLeod and the chair. Appreciate the optimism of the chair that it's even overparked. But I would support her change of increasing the park and removing those parking spaces. And so those are two things that doubling the windows in the garage and supporting the increasing of the park are two things that I would support adding to our resolution. Just double checking to make sure I don't have a final comment. I believe that is it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Momin.
Thank you. I would like to be quick. I can't be more emphatic in supporting this project. I think Albany needs this project. This is a right kind of project in location with right density and right program. I'm really thankful to the project sponsor and the design team for working with the commission for the last couple of months and being really responsive and receptive to our comments. I'm confident that this is going to be a great precedent project for the San Pablo Avenue specific plan development, not just in design quality, but also in terms of design process and the community engagement. I have some comments and some suggestions. I totally support Commissioner Chairwadi's suggestion of removing those 6 parking spaces. In the last meeting, we had discussed about a need for a play area. And at that time, I did not imagine that the designers would suggest a play area in that location that is kind of a very small pocket park. And so when I saw the revised design, that kind of term that area as a play area, I was not really convinced. And so this suggestion of removing those 6 parking spaces and enlarging that park into a sizable park that would also have some play area, children's play area features would be a really great value addition to this project. I think I totally support that idea. I saw some good design changes in the townhouses, the color variation and adding those balconies, alternate balconies at level 3 really makes a good variation, good appearance to the row of townhouses. I really like that. I also see some really good improvements in the landscape plans, particularly the podium plans. I like the flow of circulation spaces and the location of seating and gathering areas. They are really nicely planned. And some smaller details like murals at the mini park is also very interesting. I recommend that I suggest that the recommendations provided by the third-party landscape reviewer should be followed. They are all sensible, and that would make really good improvement in the already good open space provision and a good, nice landscape plan that has been designed so far. And then I am still not very convinced by the dog walk. It is just a 9 feet wide, long space along the sidewalk. And we are showing some details in the plan, but the rendering shows something else. And so I would request the designer to take a really a strong look at that space and see what could be done with that space. In that, in order to make the dog walk work, you have kind of reverse the plantation strip and put the sidewalk towards the drive lanes. I'm not really comfortable with that design change, and I'm not very convinced with the efficacy of that space as a dog walk. And now the commissioners can take a look and suggest if they have any ideas for that space. And then I agree some of those comments Commissioner McLeod mentioned about the townhouses garage area. I was just wondering, is it necessary to provide individual trash cans for individual townhouses? Since this is kind of a one neighborhood, and a lot of residents from the building A and building B would be bringing their trash down to those trash rooms in the garage. Can we have a common trash room which could be accessed from outside also, and the townhouses could dispose their trash in that trash room instead of having trash cans in the individual garage? That would kind of make it cluttered, as well as makes the bike parking and the other functionality of the garage a little more cumbersome. I would suggest designers to look at that. And then designers mentioned that you are providing some curtain steel features along the sidewalk. I would just like you to be mindful about the staining that these curtain features have on the surfaces adjacent. I have seen a lot of curtain surfaces at the sidewalk. The patina that develops on those curtain panels over the time kind of stains any adjacent material, any adjacent surface that comes in contact with that. And so if you have those curtain elements at the sidewalk or touching any horizontal surface, I think you should be careful about that. They could be in either surrounded by some plantation plants or gravels or things like that. And yeah, I think that's all. That's all. Most comments I have. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Momin. With that, I know we're getting ready to wrap, but I've been taking some great notes here with all the commissioners' comments. And I would be prepared to make a motion right now that includes many of the comments that commissioners have said. So I will go ahead and maybe give this a go. I know this is a very complex project with lots of conditions and considerations. There have been a lot of great comments for commissioners, some that are in our jurisdiction, some like the all-electric building that aren't necessarily in a planning department's purview, but are nonetheless, I think, really good feedback for the sponsors team to take back and consider. And hopefully you guys will come forward either at City Council with those changes or, while you're going through the building permit review phase. But with that, I will try to make a motion right now and see where this goes. So I will make a motion to adopt resolutions 2021-02 and 03 with the following conditions. 1, to eliminate the 6 parking spaces and enlarge the park by the commensurate amount. By the commensurate amount of square footage. 2, require that the bike room access is redesigned such that it allows for maneuvering of cargo bikes. 3, encourage the developer to look at relocating the MEP spaces that are in Building B along San Pablo. 4, encourage that the developer chooses to provide the art requirement on site and takes Commissioner Pilch's suggestions maybe of incorporating some of the bowling alley signage into the on-site art, but either way to certainly salvage the signage as a requirement. And then lastly, as part of the resolutions, taking Commissioner Donaldson's suggestion into play, clarifying the general plan findings in the resolutions to note that this project does in some, I will lead it to staff to wordsmith, but basically to acknowledge that there are some provisions of our local general plan and ordinances that are not in compliance because they are being trumped by state law. I agree with Commissioner Donaldson. I think it's important to recognize that, but we also all understand that our general plan will be not complied with in all of its bits and pieces because of state law provisions. So those are my recommended conditions or sort of encouragement statements that I would like to maybe formally add on to these resolutions that will get forwarded onto City Council for ultimate approval. So that is my motion. So
can you just repeat number 2? I want to make sure I get the word.
Yes. So number 2 was to require that the bike room on the ground floor, that the access, so the door access, is redesigned such that there is ease of turning, sort of maneuvering for cargo bikes. I think the comment was the way the door was oriented. It would be hard to maneuver with the parked car directly in front of it for a longer tail bike. So I think there might be a variety of different creative ways of how you can accommodate that. But I think if we put the principle down there, the design team can figure out how to do that. Great. Okay, so that wraps it for me. I see a couple hands. I'll go Commissioner Donaldson.
Yes, thank you. I think we should vote on the resolution separately. I think we should vote on the sequel resolution first. And I'm prepared to second that one. And then just to get the environmental review out of the way.
Yeah, we should.
Sure,
Then
I agree with you. Okay, that's a great.
okay,
And
that's good.
so
Thank
then,
you.
Sure, then I will take that friendly amendment. And so that would be adopting resolution 20-21, sorry, 2021-02 with no conditions. That is the CEQA resolution. And we will just take that first. And maybe just because I see another hand up, before we take a vote on that item, Commissioner McLeod.
Oh, I just wanted to kind of clarify about the MEP room, that it be that area be used for commercial space.
Sure, I'm happy to encourage that into my condition as a friendly amendment, that when we say encourage the MEP spaces to be relocated and replaced with an active commercial use. Sure, thank you. And then Commissioner Pilch.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, I agree. We can vote on these separately. Would you be willing? Would you accept a friendly amendment to add on increasing the windows in the garage on Clay and Adams by either the factor of 1.5 or double them?
I actually would not. I don't think windows would be a good addition from an architectural perspective. So I'm not supportive of taking that on, but maybe we can see how the motion goes.
Okay. And then, okay, I'll leave it there. But did you want to add any, and would you want to add anything about the garbage bins in the townhouses, or do you feel that the applicant has noted and will take care of that?
I personally don't want to add those in. I think in units that look more like single family homes, what's shown in is an example. It's not sort of exactly what it's going to look like. People are going to store their cars, their bikes, their trash can, kind of however they so choose. So I don't want to actually make that prescriptive. I think it's different in a large apartment building than it is in the townhouses.
Okay. Okay. And I also want to thank you for putting together all of our comments like this.
Absolutely. All right. So on the motion that I made, Commissioner Donaldson, that was a second on the CEQA?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then why don't we go ahead and call that motion then? So again, that is item 7-1, resolution 2021-02, the CEQA. On that, I will call the vote then. Commissioner Momin.
Yes.
Commissioner McLeod.
Yes.
Commissioner Pilch.
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I vote yes as well. So that motion passes 5-0 for that resolution. And then we will call the second item, as I described before, with those specific conditions of approval or recommendations. That is now adopting resolution 2021-03. This is for density bonus and design review recommendation to council. On that motion, would anyone like to second that motion?
I will second it.
Okay. Second by Commissioner McLeod. Then on that vote, Commissioner Momin.
Yes.
Commissioner Pilch.
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson.
No.
Commissioner McLeod.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that motion passes 4-1. And that concludes our regular item 7 this evening. Takes us, we will move along.
Could I just say one last thing? And I would really like to thank the applicants for doing a great job. I didn't necessarily say that earlier, but I'm very impressed with the project and think it's a great project for Albany.
Well, thank you all. We really appreciated
much.
this process, and certainly, we think it, from the beginning, it's come a long way, and it's come a long way with your help and suggestions, and we really love the point we've gotten to here, and we'll continue to do our best to make a fantastic project.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, with that then, next up on our agenda, just next hearing, the next regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, sort of back to our usual, is October 13th at 7 p.m. And did you have a comment?
I was going to say, the commission is adjourned and we're going to bring up Parks, Rec, and Open Space to review the street trees.
Wonderful. And just to confirm, since this is new for all of us, we can all log off.
You can all exit. Thank you for your time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm promoting some of our Parks, Rec, and Open Space folks to panelist.
And I intend to stay on to listen, but if you need to demote me, I'll be sad, but I'll understand.
Let's see here. We'll go ahead and have to do that. We'll have to change your role to attendee. There you go. Okay. Are we ready to start?
Yes, I think everybody's here.
Okay. I'm not sure who the chair is, so I'll Ryan. Okay, great.
Yes, I'm acting as chair. Brian Martin is not able to attend. So would you like me to proceed? Can we have a roll call?
Certainly. Commissioner Abbott?
Here.
Commissioner Armendariz?
Here.
Commissioner Beal?
Present.
Commissioner Chain Frank?
Here.
Commissioner Kent? Commissioner Price?
Here.
And Chair Martin.
Okay, we have a quorum. Can we have a staff report?
I'm happy to do the staff report, although there is two additional things. When we have quasi-judicial review, we have what's known as ex parte communications, and that's just a disclosure for the group. If you've had any communications with the project sponsor or anyone involved, we require that be disclosed. So if anyone has that information to disclose, now's the time. If not, we can move on. There's also a public comment on your agenda. I don't see any hands raised. Okay, with that, I'm happy to move on to this presentation. It's somewhat brief. I'm going to share my screen here. So before you tonight is a street tree removal request for a development application at 540 San Pablo Avenue, also known as the Albany Hole. Just to give you some background on the property, it's 2.18 acres with existing commercial spaces, approximately 37,700 square feet in area. Obviously, prior to this, we've just gone through the Planning Commission review for the mixed use project. That includes 207 apartment townhouse units and 5,700 square feet of ground floor retail. And here's the street view of the property looking west. So it encompasses both the bowling alley and then this single story commercial use here to the north. As part of their development application, the project applicant has filed a street tree removal request to remove 27 of the existing 37 trees that are on San Pablo and Adams. As part of that, they will be not only replacing trees, but they're also going to expand the planting palette to include Clay Street, where currently there are no street trees. And in your staff report, we gave you just a kind of a fairly simple table to give you an idea of where the trees are coming out. So on San Pablo Avenue, there are 10 American sweet gum trees that are proposed to be removed. And then on the Adams Street side, there's 3 different varieties of different quantities: flowering cherry, Australian willow, and 2 maple trees, which total 17. And so that's the 27 trees in total that are requested to be removed. And this is an exhibit in your staff report denoting the trees and their location as to where they're proposed to be removed around the site. With respect to the proposed new trees, they're simplifying the species down to these 4: the water gum, scarlet oak, African sumac, and ghost gum. So there will be new trees. It's an area which referred to as the dog walking area. It's adjacent to Building A. So there's 7 trees there that are going to remain on San Pablo Avenue. There's going to be 13 new trees, a scarlet oak, and then on Adams Street, 12 new trees of African sumac species are proposed. And then on Clay Street, where there currently are no trees, 8 new trees are proposed. So when looking at this, this accounts for the 10 that are proposed to remain. And then you have the 33 trees that will be new. So altogether, this is an overall increase in 5 street trees around the subject property. And this is also another exhibit that was provided to you in your packet that just shows the perimeter planting of the tree location. This is just a snapshot of it. It was also included in your packet a memo that was prepared by an external consultant who evaluated the street trees and overall supported the planting palette and the species that are proposed as part of this scope. I haven't received any correspondence related to the tree removal at this time. And with that, we're going to recommend that the Parks, Rec, and Open Space proceed with their review and action to approve the street tree removal request.
Okay, we already had public comment? No. Do we have anyone?
I think we do commissioner questions first, right?
That's okay. Correct. Commissioner questions, then you can move to public comments on the item itself, and then commissioner comments.
Okay, does anyone want to start off? Anyone want to go first?
Should I go ahead?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So thanks. I just, usually when the urban forester, well, thank you for this presentation, but usually when the urban forester presents the street tree removal request, he includes some pictures. And I understand there's, this is a bulk sort of clearing out, but are there any aerial photos or street photos that we can view as part of this review?
Myself there. Yeah, I can pull up the staff report. Within the staff report, I included just some Google Street Views to give you an idea of where the trees are currently, and I'd be happy to I can.
Yeah, I think it'd be good for the public to see those too. It's
going to take me a minute or two, so if the commission wants to continue their discussions, I'll work on that.
Does anyone have any other comments while she pulls that up?
I have a question. I'm curious about how the types of trees that were selected to be planted, and how were those types of trees? Because I noticed they're different from the ones that are being removed. So I'm just curious about the types of trees that are there. Why are those ones going, and then why can none of them be preserved? And then how are the trees that are being planted selected?
Let me see. I could answer that as an applicant, but we might also promote Karen, who is our landscape architect, as well. She can probably add more detail, but landscape architect PGA did meet with the city arborist, and the recommendations are coming from the city arborist to remove the liquid ambers, which have problems with sidewalk lifting and dropping, balls that are hazards for cyclists and whatnot. And so the replacement trees also were chosen by the city arborist, but Karen could potentially give you more detail on that as well.
And allow Karen to speak.
Does anyone else have any other questions while we try to gather those resources?
Okay. So,
hi there. Can you hear me?
Oh, there's Karen, yeah.
Okay, yeah, hi, my name's Karen Krolewski. I'm the landscape architect for this project. So the tree replacement on San Pablo Avenue, well, we reviewed the existing trees with the city arborist prior to developing our plan. And we also sent our in-house arborist, consulting arborist, out to the site to review the condition of the existing trees. So on San Pablo Avenue, the existing liquid amber trees, also known as sweet gum, what we were told was that the city has evaluated the trees along San Pablo and at this time has plans to, as those trees are in poor condition and not desired, to replace them with Shumard oak, which is what we're showing, replacing the existing liquid ambers along San Pablo. And part of that is because the liquid ambers have a deep rooting system that often causes damage to the sidewalks. And then there's also seed pods, which can sometimes fall off the trees and is dangerous to bicyclists. So as part of the city's plan, that's what's master planned for replacement along that section of San Pablo. And also so the two trees that we're keeping on that edge are already Shumard oaks. They're recent replacements. If desired, the project could keep the sweet gums for now. There's enough space, for the developer to do their work, but we're taking them out as a request of the city and replacing them. And then on Clay Street, there currently are no street trees. So the sidewalk is 4 feet wide. So we're expanding the sidewalk there and planting street trees on that edge. That species was reviewed by the city arborist, but if there's a desire for a different species, we're open to that. On Adams Street, there's currently kind of a double row of trees that occur in substandard planting pockets. So we're showing to keep the inner row of trees, which are in better condition, and open up the planting area around those trees. And then as you get towards the townhomes that are planned on Adams Street, we're showing new tree planting along that edge. So yeah, any other questions on what's planned?
So the removals of those on Adams were also requested, same as the ones on San Pablo, or that was a different decision?
I'm not sure what was said exactly on those from the city arborist, but in our opinion, I think one of them is currently looks close to it's close to not being alive anymore. They're kind of like a mix of some cherry trees and I think another species, and they're in like openings that are 2 by 2. So if we peel back the paving around those, they're not going to have a great chance of surviving. So I think, in our opinion, it would be better to preserve the inner row and focus on the health of those. Because there's currently more planted area around the inner row, and those trees are more mature and growing better at this time.
So I had a question. So overall, would you say that this project is going to have it's going to be better selection of trees than were there before?
Yes, in our opinion, the trees that we are recommending will, over the long term, have a better rate at survival. And we're going to, be providing irrigation and a larger planted area for the root system.
Did we consider the possibility of fruit trees, or are they something you discourage on the street tree side?
Sorry, what type of tree?
Fruit trees, trees that bear fruit.
Generally, we recommend trees that are going to get larger than a fruit tree, because they'll have more leaves and, kind of take in more of the toxins in the air. Fruit trees could be planted out there, but in general, the way fruit trees function is that you kind of want to prune them so they're a little smaller in size, so they won't provide as much shade and canopy as a regular tree will. And
I guess my last question would be, in terms of, I'm not sure who this goes to, if this is you or one of the other staff members, or the forester, but your feeling that it's going to go well with the decor, with the atmosphere. The appearance is going to be, this is the best fit.
Yeah, I think the trees are selected for form and their ability to fit with a taller building, so that they won't require a lot of pruning. And I think the palette we provided is, we were trying to provide a little bit more varied palette than you normally see, so that, it's not a monoculture out there. So some of the trees we selected are probably a little bit more unusual than you see, but they're based on, current best practices and, research by our in-house arborist, in terms of what's the best in terms of street tree practices.
Okay. I guess, does anyone else have questions? Okay, seeing none.
I think, yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Price. Yeah, I think we just need to jump in. I'm sure Brian can see us raising our hands. So we just need to jump in.
Oh, yeah, the hand. Yeah, I remember those.
Okay, so if Commissioner Price if you'd like to go, please.
Thanks. Sorry, just to clarify on the trees on San Pablo, I apologize if you said this, but the main criteria was around kind of expectations of future performance and uplift of the sidewalk and things like that. Are any of the trees, were they judged to be unhealthy or damaged, or are they already lifting up the sidewalk?
Let's see.
I'm just seeing that there's they're large. That's all. So.
Yeah, they are large. I think they're. I don't think we went as far as to list the health rating on them. I'm just kind of recalling from memory that some of them were, in our opinion, were in decline. They have been out there a while. I don't know what year they were planted, but in general, street trees do have a lifespan, unfortunately. It's possible that we could, the project could preserve those and then, and then in 10 years they start to decline, and then the city would be replacing them. But no, we don't have a full health rating shown on our plans.
And I can just add one minor thing. It's not necessarily a health rating, but there had been some trip and fall claims in that area because the roots had lifted the sidewalk. And so there was an effort, I believe maybe 5 or 6 years ago, to do some repair work to the sidewalk, to trim the roots on those trees to prevent further damage.
Yeah, and I can confirm, I seem to remember walking by there recently, and the sidewalks are not so great. So.
Thanks.
Okay, I'd like to jump in with a question then. I didn't see in the staff report, and I may have just missed it, but some estimate of the size of the trees that are being proposed. We don't get too many opportunities to plant large trees in Albany, and I think we'd kind of like to maximize that if we can. So can you kind of run down just an estimate of how large these trees would be?
So we would call for 24-inch box trees to go in there, which would mean that the root system comes in a container that's 24 by 24. And then it depends on the species. So in the year that we're buying the trees, so in general, a tree will, when it goes in, it'll probably be about 13 feet tall to 15, it depends. And then along with that, California uses more a 24-inch box to describe the size of the tree. So the caliper of the tree is probably around 3 inches, I would say 3.5.
I'm more asking about the mature trees. The mature trees.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I was going in the weeds there.
Almost literally.
Yeah, so it'll depend on the tree, but so let's see. The ones along San Pablo, the Shumered oak, probably they're going to top out at 40 feet high, maybe 50. And I would say probably the same on the trees, the Tristanias. So these are more columnar trees. So the canopy will be about 15 to 20 feet, max. And in general, 40 to 50 feet is kind of the goal in terms of height.
Perfect. That's what I was asking. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay. Let's see. So there's, let's see, anyone else? Okay. So I guess what my comments would be is that,
Commissioner Beal, I think we need to go to public comments now.
Oh, we go to public comments again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, right. That's right. We go to public comment, and then we come back and have comments, and then we have, excuse me.
And staff will take care of that.
Do we have anyone, can we have public comment now? Do we have anyone out there?
Yeah, we'll give people a few minutes, a few seconds to raise their hands.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Okay, it doesn't look like anyone has raised their hand. So I think it's okay to close public comments at this time.
Okay. So all right. So I guess that was questions, and now we have comments. Is that comments to the commissioners?
Comments from commissioners.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So who wants to go first? Okay, there goes, yes. Commissioner Frank.
Yeah, I just want to say, it was funny because I was thinking that I wanted Commissioner Kent to be here, and I realized why he's not, because he's the principal at PGA Design. And so that gives me a lot of confidence in this landscape design, because he's been obviously Albany resident, Parks Commissioner, and formerly Planning Commissioner. So I think it's hard for me to understand, loved Commissioner Abbott's question, what's the canopy size, how big it's going to be? I can't tell from hearing the species. So I think I personally have a lot of trust in PGA Design's leadership, and I'm hoping that will just come through and that we'll really get a great sort of aesthetic with the trees that, match other areas of development. So I would just put a word in that way, given that I don't really understand all the tree species and know how it'll end up looking. But thank you. I think it's a beautiful design all the way around. And I love that there's going to be a net addition of trees.
Does anyone else have anything to say?
I'll just comment quickly. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
Take your time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I jump in? I'm sorry. Just quickly, I did just quick look up, and just the liquid ambers are 60 to 80 feet. So these will be a little smaller, but I'm not, you want the folks living in those buildings to have a view as well. So, there you go. And I certainly trust Commissioner Kent as well as John Hockridge. So I'm satisfied with this plan. I'm very happy with it.
Commissioner Price?
Yeah, I think that I know a little bit about trees. I think the palette looks really nice, and it looks like the designers are really trying to get as many trees in as possible. So I think that's great. I think in general I rather keep existing older trees that are in good health and are large, because takes a lot of time to get that back. But if the trees are already problematic and declining, then maybe they need to be replaced at this point.
Next commissioner, anyone else?
I'll just jump in real quick as somebody who walks along that stretch of sidewalk very frequently. It has been shaved recently. There is continuing sidewalk damage. So yeah, these trees are probably going to pose a risk if they're not taken out at some point.
Anybody else?
I guess my only comment is that I noticed that the consultants recommend just that less paving as possible between trees and just increasing the planting size. So I just hope that will be heeded.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I guess I'll say a few words and try to sum it up. Just kind of seeing this coming in, I thought it was a great project for Albany, but I didn't know much about it. I saw we were going to have a street tree removal application, which I just thought I'd point out. It sounds like they're taking away trees. Well, lo and behold, we're gaining trees. They're going to be a better choice of trees. So this project gives us the opportunity, because often what was happened in the past, and we've alluded to the sidewalk problem, was that the wrong trees were chosen for locations. And so this project offers an opportunity to replace those trees, eliminating a hazard. It's going to provide what I think is a varied mix of housing, without delving into the details, but it's a nice mix. This could have been a lot worse. It could have been, just all apartments, could have been all houses. So, but so that said, it looks like we're going to wind up with a better situation. I think there's a lot, we might want this different or that different, but in the end, our authority is limited, one thing, and then the other, we'd probably be slowing down the project by insisting on too much. So on that note, that summarizes my comments and what I think is the view of the commission. That's overall good. So let's, does someone want to make a motion?
Can I just say one thing? Is what Commissioner Price said, I really agree with. And many people who've been on this commission with me for years know my position generally as Commissioner Abbott about taking down big trees with canopies. I completely agree with Commissioner Price in terms of process. And I think the reason I'm sort of letting go here is because honestly, there's a lack of information. And so I do hope that next time, if we're presented with this, it can be as detailed as it typically is for us with, the urban forester here to present and talking about the various trees. But I think the reason I'm giving a lot of sort of confidence in this is because Commissioner Kent was part of, is sort of part of the design team. So I would just say that in the future, I would love to see more detail, the same amount that we give any street tree removal. And that I very much agree with Commissioner Price that when we have a healthy, large trees in Albany, even if we might replace them with another potentially large tree, it's a loss. It's a loss for many reasons because it takes years for those trees to reach that maturity in that canopy. So I just wanted to put that word in because I wouldn't feel, I just want to lay out my thoughts before the vote on this.
Yeah, and I think with that, I'll go to you in a second, Todd. But because I've had kind of a similar feeling that it seems like this is a much bigger project, yet we're being asked to do it in a compressed time frame. And this is going to be a feature of a lot that we're going to see in Albany now with the SB 9 is passed. There's going to be more development here. So we're going to need some sort of streamlined process, yet we still have to give the things justice. So it does seem like we're not getting the same process with this particular application. And that was squeezed in. Go ahead, Tom. Commissioner.
So I just wanted to jump in, and this is really kind of a note for staff. And this reminds me of the condo project on Portland and Canes. That a proposal came to us to remove trees and it just wasn't adequate. The proposal, and we take trees pretty seriously. So staff, let the applicants know that we take this stuff pretty seriously, and we need some real information. I'm perfectly happy with this. I'm perfectly willing to. In fact, I will in a moment make a motion to accept this application. But going forward, I think kind of linking into what Commissioner Beal and Commissioner Chang Frank were saying, we take this stuff seriously and we would like some more information. So with that, I propose I'm going to move.
Wait.
Yep,
hold on.
Not time yet?
No, just hold, because it's still, we went back into comment. So because of what she said and what I said, before we do go to a motion, I just want to ask this one question. Do any of the commissioners feel that at this point they don't have adequate information with which to go to a vote? And I just want to have that opportunity here. We'll leave a couple seconds. Anyone, just raise your hand if you're not ready.
Commissioner Beal, I think that by making a motion, I think
you're
will
right.
have the answer.
Yeah. Because of the right. Okay, go ahead. You make your motion then.
So I will move that we approve the street tree removal application. I mean, it's basically a street tree removal application, right? That's what we're approving for this.
Do we have a second?
Project.
Is there a second? Wait. Hello?
You can second, Brian.
Yeah. I'm getting worried because usually I don't. Okay, I'll second. Okay. So then, okay. Can we have a roll call vote?
Yeah. Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Armendariz?
Yes.
Commissioner Beal?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank?
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
Is that all? Okay, that's everybody that's here. Okay, then the motion carries. And on that note, I think we have no more business. So I think the meeting's adjourned. We'll see you at our next meeting, the second Tuesday of the month, second Thursday of the month.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.